No, I do find it interesting as a Christian because I know that, our belief about where people go and that Ravi we joked about doing a story where Ravi is, him and Chesterton have been in a big old manly bear hug for pretty much since he got there. And, there's a joyfulness, but there is a sorrow. And I think for me, it is like the deaths that get me the most are when the really good people die and leave behind that giant hole, It's stupid.
No, that's great.
It was the same for me when my mentor died, the old guy, Pancakes. It was like, wow, he's gone now. It had a big impact on my desire to take my faith seriously because I was at the time really not serious, and
yeah, I find when people die that were important to you, it's always a wake up call for me, just to take a deep breath, step back and think about what your impact will be. That's kind of how it always is for me. I think when I go, what's, really all that only the things that I've done for the kingdom of God will have any eternal value, We tell dumb jokes on the internet and that's great, but
yeah. Yeah, it's amazing to see the impact that he's had on so many people. I've seen other people. I think the press secretary of the president or whatever, you think that she's on TV all the time. She's got to have some ability to control her emotions. And she started to break up as she was talking about Ravi, and let's go to the next clip.
Somebody once asked me, what are going to be your first words when you see God? I said, I'm going to be absolutely silent because I'll be terrified at what his words are first going to be to me. I'm nowhere near concerned about what I'm going to say to him. I am truly concerned about what he is going to say to me. And if I were to hear from him the words, well done, what do you say? The divine accolade that everyone longs for and dreams for.
There are emotionally satisfying answers as time goes by. I've lived with a lot of pain with a broken back. I have 2 titanium rods that are about 8 inches long, 4 clamps, 8 screws bolting me down. I injured my back very badly. There were times I'd be sitting in the front seat with a car pulling over my head on my steering wheel and crying. The pain was so intense. And you know what I've found? How much it has taught me to depend on him every day to sustain me. There are 2 things I need with this lifestyle: a strong back and strong vocal cords, and I have neither. And God has shown me that in my weakness has manifested his strength, and how his healing hand even came through on my back after years and years of suffering. There is an emotional satisfaction when I know that there is a cross. There is a hill called Calvary. There is a suffering Savior. There is a relationship where he gives me comfort. God does not conquer in spite of the dark mystery of evil. He conquers through it. He conquers through evil and pain and suffering and makes you the person he intended you to be through that.
Yeah, I think a big part of Ravi's message is kind of just how shocking the idea is that God is that personally invested in each one of us. And it's something that's hard to grasp, even as just culturally for us, we think of ourselves as accidents of the universe, insignificant. And it's easy for us to think that way. It's so far on the other end of the spectrum of thought to believe that God would care enough about you, just you, and that you were created with a purpose. For some reason, we can't wrap our heads around that.
I think about someone like Ravi when he's got this message of that you will have suffering as a Christian.
Yeah.
But in the end, it will all be redeemed for God's glory and for God's purposes. And you contrast that with some of the prosperity gospel guys.
Right.
Whenever one of those prosperity gospel guys gets sick or falls ill, or dies, it always, to me, it empties their message. Like, well, what, you told us we could claim health and wealth and happiness, and you're dead. So
Yeah.
And you think about someone like Robbie, where
yeah, it's
this
almost
is
like
the
Benny.
message he's been preaching. He says,
He's like the anti-Hinn, like him and Benny Hinn, like they're like two different paths of a, Indian guy shows up in America with Jesus, the story of Jesus. And,
although Hinn was like Arabic, isn't he?
oh, is he? Sorry. I just ruined it. Oh, they are Arabic, aren't they?
That's what costumes.
I always thought Hinn was Indian.
He has that vague look where you can't really tell.
Yeah.
So
it just feels,
but no, it's true.
Plus you don't think of it. You think of Arabic just being Islamic.
It does feel like this mirror image thing. This evil twin.
Yes, this weird evil twin.
Where you have one guy saying
Middle Eastern, right?
God will,
no, that's Asia. Dang it.
You're derailing me. God will give us blessing and health and wealth and happiness, and we can claim it all. And it's this message that sounds so good right now, but in the end of his life, it will prove empty.
Yeah.
And you have a guy like Ravi that's saying, we'll have suffering, we'll have pain, but we'll have Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's a much more fulfilling message when you actually die and leave that legacy behind.
Yeah, let's go to actually, let's do is, if you can change the order down, let's do the testimony next, because that kind of ties in what we're talking about.
When I was 17 years old, I would never have dreamed that I'd be standing here at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta some years from now, talking to over 60,000 youth live and many online, because at the age of 17, I was on a bed of suicide, having attempted to take my own life. And God, who's sovereign over the whole universe, tapped the shoulder of one man who had come to India from Calgary, Alberta, and told him to send somebody into my hospital room with a Bible. I'd never owned one. I'd never opened one. I didn't know if you told me there were 4 different gospels telling you the same story of Jesus. And here the Bible is being read to me by my mother, whose English was not that sharp, and she's reading from the King James language, and comes to the words of Jesus, because I live, you also shall live. And till this day, now at the age of 73, 56 years later, I stand before and I say to you, why on earth did a sovereign God care enough to speak to somebody to come into that hospital room and speak to me? The day you wake up and it dawns on you that you matter to God as an individual, that you never realize the dreams and the plans that He has for you, and the fulfillment He can bring in and through you, the majestic name that He holds is willing to indwell you.
Yeah, so that's on that idea. I mean, hardly any of us even think that way, that the God of the universe is behind a thing like that. Somebody coming to you, bringing you that message, reaching out to you. And it's like it's poison to our lives to think the opposite of that, to how insignificant we make ourselves, thinking none of this is orchestrated, it's all meaningless. And
you're starting to sound like a Calvinist over there, bro. Yeah, no, there's definitely this orchestration of everything that happens, and it's crazy to think,
because you can look at everything that's happened in your life, and you could. I don't know.
That's the amazing thing when I think about all the dumb decisions I almost made.
Mm-hmm.
Like 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 15 years ago.
Yeah,
and I look back, or things that even things that went wrong, and I look at everything that kind of weaved me in this direction where I am today. It's
and how God works through the bad things that happen. Absolutely. And even when you've made a big mistake, God works through those. And every time you're ready to come back,